Adventures in Supply Chain podcast is pleased to announce the Coronavirus and Supply Chain series to help our communities with the insights of outstanding leaders in supply chain and in other critical functions. These challenging times are also for transformations and opportunities. We will get through this together, and we will make it happen. It's our pleasure to introduce Vivek Sengupta, the head of procurement at ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. ICANN is a key facilitator in the global discussions around evolving Internet policy. Vivek is a dynamic and trusted procurement professional having over 20 years of experience across varied industries such as Internet, technology, insurance, financial services, manufacturing, and entertainment. With his strong interpersonal skills, Vivek has great experience in leading diverse cross-disciplinary teams and matrix organizations. He got his MBA from Indiana University, a top 20 U.S. business school with concentrations in strategy and supply chain. Vivek is a ISM Certified Purchasing Manager, C.P.M, and a certified Six Sigma Green Belt. And now with you, your host, Marcias, and her amazing guest, Vivek Sengupta.
Hello, Vivek. A pleasure to have you on the show. It's an honor that you join us today to talk about how we can build the purchasing function from scratch when we don't have anything, when we need to lay out all the foundations. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marcia. It's great to be here on the show. Thank you for inviting me on this podcast series.
Of course, this is our pleasure. And you are the purchasing director of ICANN. Can you help us to know more about it? Because we don't know what it is, but we use it every day. So if you could please elaborate on your role and on your company, that would be very helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, ICANN is actually quite a unique organization. So it stands for the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. So essentially, if you haven't heard of ICANN before, to your listeners, that it's basically the unique organization that administers and manages the domain name system, the DNS of the Internet. So it's really the backbone of the Internet. And it is only one ICANN in the whole world. So it's a unique organization. It's a non-profit organization, and it's headquartered in Los Angeles. That's where I'm based. And it's a medium-sized organization. So it's not very large, but it is global. We have locations all around the world. And, so that's ICANN. And it's very, very exciting. Before, I've been with ICANN about, I think, close to 7 years now. So when I joined, but before that, I did not work in the nonprofit sector at all. And I hadn't even heard of ICANN before the opportunity. But so that really opened my eyes, because I think most of us have worked with large organizations before, but this was a whole new experience for me, which I really have enjoyed my time.
Yes, and Vivek, you had a great challenge when you got there, right? Because you had to build the purchasing function from the ground up. So where do you start? What did you do? What was your approach?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Marcia. Even before I tell you what I did when I joined ICANN, let me start by telling you how it was the perfect opportunity for me and what set me up for it beforehand. So, you and I both worked at Cummins before together. I think my time at Cummins was instrumental in building for what would follow when I joined ICANN. The reason is because to start up a purchasing function or a procurement department, it's not for everybody. So you need to have it helps to have a certain kind of background to do that. Of course, there are different types of procurement departments, but so I'll just tell you about my background. So I was very fortunate to actually have a very well-rounded purchasing or procurement experience. So, you could have, one side of the spectrum could be that a person has a very good experience, many, many years, maybe 10, 15 years experience in a very vertical, specialized areas. For example, strategic sourcing or procurement operations or negotiations or supplier, negotiations, something like that, which is great experience. And that's one type of experience. The other side of the spectrum, I would say, is somebody who would have done a little bit of this, a little bit of that, so maybe, and kind of that was what my experience was. I didn't start out a plan to do that at all in my career, but I really, 8 years I was at Cummins before really set me up really well to to have a well-rounded background of all sides of procurement. So but I think in 8 years I had like 5 different roles. I of course did, the sourcing manager, the standard, it's a strategic sourcing functions there, contract management, negotiations, all of that. That was the core, the pillar of setting me up. But then, of course, I did 4 other roles. I went into what's called functional excellence, which is nothing but ensuring that the standard procurement functions actually are excellent in what they do. So setting them up with tools, templates, processes, best practices. So I did that for a little bit. So instead of doing the sourcing, I would help out other people to do the sourcing and making sure they were doing it excellently. So that's functional excellence. And then for a stint, I kind of went into the program management side. So I was implementing Ariba around the world for Cummins. So that helped me understand, from a IT technical standpoint, ERP standpoint, what are the interactions, what are the challenges, what are the issues. So that helped me a little bit. One of the key learnings, I think, was on the policy and process side. So process improvement side, internally facing, how to ensure, those challenges are met and how to deal with that. So that was another role that I had. And then I think at the end, at my stint at Cummins, I was a continuous improvement leader. So that was also, that was a new territory because it was, okay, what can we do that we've never done before? So it's almost like innovation, creativity, it's engaging with all the regions globally, with the regional leaders. So it was a very, so the whole point of me telling you the story is to say that it was a very well-rounded learning for me, which would help me at Cummins because I would never know. But, I happened to move to California because to join my wife. So I had to leave Cummins, and then I was in California. And within 6 months, this opportunity came up for ICANN wanting to start a procurement department. And literally every single bullet point in the job description was what I had done at Cummins. And so it was such a perfect fit. Mine is a unique experience. Everybody else's experience was different. I'm not saying that's the only part to setting up a procurement department, obviously, but it helps to understand different people's problems, different people's challenges from the supplier side, from the internal stakeholder side, from the IT perspective, from many other sides. So that gives you a better understanding. If you want me to elaborate a little bit about how to actually go about setting up a procurement department or a purchasing department, I can also tell you a little bit about that. And I think, and I won't dwell too much, I'll let you ask more questions, but I would say there are probably 3 or 4 key things you need to do at the beginning. So I'll just start to tell you about starting up, okay? I think very critical is, to create a plan for your first 100 days. That is, I would say, the number one thing you need to do. Of course, you need to do a bunch of things, yeah? But before you start getting into the details, you need to take a step back and you need to create a plan for 100 days. What are you planning to achieve in 100 days? Because, people are going to be watching out. And there are many things you need to do, but at a high level, you need, the saying is that if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else, right? So you need to create a plan. So you need to create a plan. And that plan would include the scope, understanding what it is that your scope is, because every company is different. So some purchasing functions include, various things. Some don't include various things. So does it include AP? Does it not include AP? Does it include contract management? Does it not? There are so many different things depending on other functions and what they do. So understand what the goalposts are, what the boundary conditions are, right? And what it is that's in scope, what is out of scope. So that's part of the plan. Understanding the culture and the people at the company. Some things you may have a different style at a different company coming in, and it may be a different industry or a different style that's needed with the culture. So understand and learn that culture. And then process. You need to, create a policy. If you don't have a policy already, you need to, establish business process if it's starting from scratch. So those are the things we do. Obviously, you may need to hire staff members, your resources. So that's another aspect of understanding the culture. And then obviously, one thing I would say that is very helpful is to understand your own strengths and weaknesses. Because if you know your strengths, that's great. Most people know their strengths. You need to know your weaknesses as well, because that's going to help you. You should not recruit people on your team that are an exact copy of yourself, because it'll feel good, and you guys will always agree in the meetings, but you may not be able to address the areas that need to be addressed. So try to recruit people that are complementing your skill set, by maybe they're stronger in some aspects that you're not as strong in. So that would be a good game plan. And then, overall, I would say create a plan and then make sure you're delivering on that plan in 100 days, and then you can keep going from there.
Great, Vivek. No, but this advice that you are providing is very practical. So I like that you mentioned the key points that we need to focus. And one you mentioned is the talent that you need in your team. And also when you talk before about your experience, to be able to understand the different perspectives, the different angles. Mm-hmm. So how do you do to communicate with stakeholders to get all of them on board and get them aligned with the plan that, for example, that you set up for those critical 100 days?
No, that's a great question, and that's a great segue into the next piece of it, what I was going to share. So perfect. The number one thing that will help you to be set up successfully and to get the buy-in and to get the stakeholders on board, the number one thing is you need to have a champion. You need to have somebody either on the executive team or in a leadership role. Somebody, it could be your boss. It really depends. The purchasing function that you would be starting, it might roll up or report into finance. It might report into supply chain. It might even report into, some companies it reports into HR, into marketing, into legal. So it could be a very, very different setup. And you need to understand what is the organization structure. And then it could be your boss. I'm very fortunate that I report to the CFO, and he is my number one champion. So he doesn't do procurement for a living, but he understands the importance of procurement. And so that's the value add for me. So it was very, I wouldn't say easy for me, but it was definitely a great starting point that I had somebody who I could talk to, and then he or she would help me being a champion to move obstacles and create a path to go forward. So I think that is I would say the number one criteria for success. So, and if you don't have a champion, make it your goal to find a champion and to make them a champion. So, so you need to be able to identify who are the right people that you need to be initially talking to. It could even be the CEO. It could be somebody on the C-level. It could be a vice president. It could be somebody, not at the executive seat, but they are influencing, or they have an influence, or they have a voice, or they have a seat at the table. And so that would be a good path to ensure that at least you have, that doesn't necessarily indicate or guarantee that you're going to get buy-in from all the managers in the company. And in fact, that is a very rare condition if that happens. Yeah. but at least you'll have one channel and you can work from that channel. That would be advisable. Of course, you need to try other channels as well. So that's one channel, but that's only one area. It's good to at least get the word out, and then you can try and get some kind of a top-down buy-in. That would work. But you also need to start working at the different layers, at the middle management level. So you need to start having stakeholder meetings, create your stakeholder plan, figure out who the stakeholders are, and then create a plan to meet with them and to basically communicate. This is probably a little bit later, not day one of your job, but when you start out. But once you figure out what it is you want to achieve, you want to figure out what is within your scope of responsibilities, what is not, and create a plan around a value perspective. And then you want to start meeting with stakeholders to kind of share that and communicate that. It's very, socialize that, because so that would be one. I'll add one more thing, is that try and get some quick wins. So if you can, in your first 100 days, if you can do 2 or 3 small projects, maybe you can save a little bit of money here, you can help with a supply negotiation there, or something else, right? To figure out what the problem is. If you can have a couple of quick wins, that's going to become very important to show the value, and then the word will spread.
No, those are great points, Vivek. And now I have a follow-up question, because in your answer, you talk about value, and your sponsor is now the CFO. So how can you demonstrate the value that strategic sourcing can bring to the table, can bring to an organization? Because sometimes we think about sourcing like POs, administrative tasks that add more work than value. So how can you do that?
No, that's very good question. I work in strategic sourcing every day, and I almost take it for granted. But you're totally right. We need to step back a little bit and kind of lay out what are the benefits, why strategic sourcing, and what does it mean, right? Yeah, no, that's a great question. So before I jump into strategic sourcing, I want to make one distinction between purchasing and procurement. Okay, that'll set the stage. So there is at least in my mind, there is a difference in purchasing and procurement. So purchasing is just regular, getting POs in place, just doing the transactional, buys. That's purchasing, right? P2P, procure to pay. The requisition, the negotiation with the vendor, the purchase order, the invoice comes in, making the payment to the vendor, the P2P cycle. That's purchasing. Procurement is kind of the umbrella of everything that comes under a procurement process or a function. So that could include strategic sourcing. It could include contract management. So that's not just the tactical procure to pay, the PO process. It's more strategic. So that's what procurement is. So I'm the head of procurement at ICANN, which includes purchasing as well as strategic sourcing as well as other things. So let's talk about strategic sourcing now. So that's a good segue into what is strategic sourcing and how is it different from purchasing, right? Strategic sourcing is talking about it's a strategic part of why we want to do anything with in terms of on the supply chain side, whether it's supply consolidation, whether it's cost reduction, maybe it's none of those. Maybe it's quality improvement. Maybe it is partnering with a supplier. All of those are elements that could go into in the strategy. So at the end of the day, and this kind of ties in a little bit with contract management as well. So it's kind of goes hand in hand. And the concept is it's not just cutting a PO, paper pushing, and saying, okay, vendor, you can now we buy from you, right? That's the tactical aspect of it. We're taking a step back and we're trying to understand why do we want to do something, not actually what it is that we want to do, but why do we want to do it, right? So you want to build maybe a 1 or 3 year plan, maybe even a 5-year plan for strategic sourcing. How do you want to achieve your goal? What is your end goal? You have maybe a goal at the end of 1 year. You have a goal at the end of 5 years. And what do you want to do immediately? And what do you want to do in the next 5 years? And so that strategic goal helps you to build your strategic sourcing plan and maybe a category management plan. So what is involved in strategic sourcing specifically? Well, strategic sourcing is really one good way of it. Is another name for it is competitive bidding, right? Competitive bidding is a tool that could help you. So specifically, it's for identifying and sourcing suppliers, right? And then negotiating and then contracting with them. So that would be the overall process. But even before you do that, you want to probably do some research and investigation, a market analysis, maybe some kind of research benchmarking to understand. Let's take an example, laptops. Let's say your company wants to figure out what they want to do with laptops in the next 5 years. So that's a good example. So go to the market, figure out who the players are in the laptop business. Yeah, who are the manufacturers, who are the people who distribute, etc., retail, and then figure out what it is your company has done in the past and what do you want to achieve. I think everything is key on what you want to achieve. If you're happy with what your process is, even it may not be efficient, it may be costly, but if you're happy and you don't really want to change, that's fine. Don't change. But most people will say we're not happy with what we want, and we want to reduce costs. We want to maybe be using 5 different types of laptops. We want to consolidate to one. We want to have a standardized image globally. So there are so many things that could be improved. Then you put together those requirements and you go to market and you bid it out. So the tools that we use in sourcing is, RFPs, requests for proposals, RFQs, requests for quotation. We even do reverse auctions or e-auctions. So I think those are some of the classical tools that have been used for over 30 years in the industry for these types of things. So that's a good example of strategic sourcing.
Great, Vivek. Thank you very much for the explanations. And you are right, because that value is reflected at the end of the day in the P&L. So they can see clearly, right, the value that the strategic sourcing can generate. So does the pandemic have any impact on the approach of strategic sourcing, or when we are building a purchasing organization?
Yes, actually, that's good. The fact that we're all in this situation right now, the pandemic, hope everybody's keeping safe and healthy. Yes, there are clearly things that are changing for people. But I would say that for the most part, strategic sourcing, I think the thing that could change is probably the volume of how much you do it, or maybe the speed at the rate at which you do it, because the critical elements that make up strategic sourcing are not changing. People are still going to expect to go through the process in terms of suppliers, and now what I have seen is a little bit the market has slowed down in terms of issuing RFPs out and suppliers being able to respond in timely fashion. So that has slowed down a bit. So we need to all be understanding of each other, as well as the suppliers, and understand that we may need to extend out sourcing events for longer periods of time. Even the negotiation process may be longer because everybody's kind of in the same situation. So that's one aspect. However, I would say that I look at this whole pandemic as an opportunity, and let me explain. Every so often, or let me tell it in a different way. I don't think we actually take the time to stop. In our normal days, even before the pandemic, I don't think we ever took the time to stop, or very few people have the time to stop and figure out, where am I? What do I need? Do I need, to get trained on something? Do I need to retool? And basically what I'm saying is, this is a really good opportunity for us to retool ourselves, right? Our toolkit, our skill set, our professional, skill set. This is a great time, because we probably I don't think our workload would have increased. Now, of course, there are some cases where people's workload have increased. I don't know if maybe in the manufacturing side or maybe on the other side, or, but if you're feeling that you have 2 hours more because you're not commuting to work, you have a little bit more time on your hands. Of course, people have the additional stresses of being at home and, all the other distractions that come. I totally understand that. But overall, if you think that there is, maybe there are projects put on hold, maybe there's additional time you have on the hand, now is the time to actually take the opportunity to retool. Now, there are different aspects of retooling, by the way. Look at your policy. Maybe your procurement policy hasn't been updated in 10 years or something. Now is the time to take a look at it and brush it off, dust it off, and see where you can improve it. Maybe your education and training area for your stakeholders hasn't been revamped in a while. Maybe you haven't done a full-blown training in 3 years. So, dust that off, figure out what you can do. Maybe you can create some quick reference guides and things and help out people, training. And maybe you can probably do a Zoom training worldwide, so that in the new normal, it's very easy to do that. Professional skill sets, or maybe soft skills. That's another area which I think is it's not looked at often enough. What are the other soft skills that maybe you were thinking of it for a long time, but you didn't have time to do it, and now is the perfect opportunity. In fact, I would say that there are a lot of maybe memberships to clubs, or a lot of things that were paid before, quote unquote paid, because you had to go there physically and you had to do things, but it's actually free. A lot of it's free right now because everything's becoming online and virtual. And I'm actually even procurement conferences. You can actually attend like procurement conferences for free now, and it's all virtual. So you don't even have to leave your favorite room of the house. And so I would say that's an opportunity. I've actually signed up for several virtual conferences, and these are expensive conferences if you go to them. They're like $1,000, $2,000 just to go there. Forget about the travel and expense. and it's totally free. I think ProcureOne is one such. Sourcing Industry Group is another example. There's just two out of many, many, many opportunities that one can sign up for. And let me end with this: communications. I think we all need to sell ourselves in this role, in the strategic sourcing role or procurement role. We need to all of us sell ourselves, and the skill that everybody needs to have for selling yourself is communication skill. And I'll just say that this is not something that I did specifically for strategic sourcing. It was just an interest of mine separately. But I joined Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an organization that's worldwide, and many of you may have heard of it and even may be part of it. But it has chapters all over the world, and wherever you are located, there's at least 3 or 4 Toastmaster clubs around you. I'm sure of it because there are several thousand around the world. And I won't get into the details of that. There's a lot of information online you can learn about it. But basically, I would say that is a safe space because it's about 20 people that you meet on a regular basis, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, where you can practice your public speaking skills. And it's a safe environment, and that's what you need to give you confidence so that you can end up making those presentations to the people that matter at your company. So I'll leave it there.
You have provided so much value, Vivek, during this time. It's incredible. All the topics, and with the depth that you have covered them, provided practical insights. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm 100% confident that the audience will appreciate this episode. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for the opportunity, and good luck to you and all your listeners.